The key of the Twilight?
It's the legendary item that surpasses the system.
X Sign, which jumpstarted the X franchise with its airing, began as a multimedia series in the minds of CyberConnect CEO Hiroshi Matsuyama as a way to get his company more on the map, after they were contracted to develop a game for Bandai. Working in concert with Studio B-Train for the animation, and Kazunori Ito scripting the entirety of the plot of Sign so it perfectly coincided with the developments of the games already well into production, allowing Sign to act as an effective prequel to events for people who played the game series first, and for things to otherwise flow from entry to entry from Sign into the games. Helped that Ito was the primary scribe for the games as well to prevent contradictions, and helped keep the entire storyline consistent. Still irritates me they didn't keep to that obvious lesson when it came to .hack GU, written by Tatsuya Hamazaki, with his prequel series Roots, written badly by Miyu Kawasaki, which resulted in contradictions up and down with basically everything else in the GU era, as Roots refused to conform to any of them. Ito himself, though, was a pretty experienced writer by the point he began on this project. He'd previously been known for writing the anime blockbuster known as the original 1995 Ghost in the Shell film adaptation, and likewise drawn acclaim for his work on the Pat Labor films, the 80s adaptation of Dirty Pair, the adaptations of Rumiko's manga Urusei Yatsura and Mason Ikoku, and the 90s Gamera film trilogy that are commonly cited as the best outings said radioactive turtle has ever had. Still on my list. From stuff I've actually reviewed over time, he's also known as the man responsible for writing the film Digimon X Evolution, which since 2004, Toei has ripped off again and again to repeat its story because they have nothing else original to go off of for Digimon lore. That didn't come from Chiaki Konaka at least. And Ito gave them their most significant mythology with the Royal Knights and Yggdrasil. And while Kazunori Ito is great as a lore guy, and keeping a character consistent in their portrayal and making them seem as a real person with how they are written, in my experience, he's not that great at creating character depth with their developments and the events we see them go through. So, a lot of the time with his casts, we have their interactions and a small bio to go on to get a defined personality, but they're not exactly ones you can spend a lot of time analyzing as, often with him, what you see is what you get. Character designs likewise had another famous name as part of events, Yoshiyuki Sadamoto. He is most famous for the man behind the artwork of several Gainax productions, including Gunbuster and its sequel Die Busters, Nadia and the Secret of the Blue Water, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Fooly Cooly. And it mostly shows, though with one flaw, and it is a significant one. And that is the anime production company contracted to animate the series, Studio B-Train. And this is just my experience with them, but B-Train series are, well, slow. And by that I mean animated slowly, and at times quite poorly, relying on long drawn-out scenes of slow movements possessing little to no animation, even when faster-paced action scenes are supposed to be happening and showcased, with them just letting the soundtrack play. And while said soundtracks are good, usually created by Ali Project and famous Japanese composer Yuki Kajiura, they are not even replacements. This, however, is in keeping with B-Train's central animation director Koichi Mashimo's influence to try and create an immersive atmosphere of a setting. But the problem is, it is rare he achieves this, as this slowness prevents development of a setting and limits exploration of its cast through actions they can make in the more limited time they resultantly have. Thus, just as often as not, it ends up hindering to the entire experience. Now, B-Train's pacing issues weren't as much of a sin with Sign as it is with their other productions. With Sign, they were able to tell, beginning to end, a complete story with many events and characters developed and focused on in that time, though not all of them get as much as they should have. But it became bad with B-Train's other series when they use it as an excuse to just do nothing and fill time with empty nonsense. With Sign, however, the slower pace instead gave it the air of the series being introspective, of people having difficulty with their interactions and communication, and thus it was more justified. And unlike other isekai and trapped in X scenarios, Sign wasn't about fighting or combat primarily. It was about people getting past barriers between them, so the slower pace was appropriate as it kept things focused on them. Later on, when they worked on Didact Roots, it didn't work, as Roots was supposed to be about a collection of active events, about adventures had with friends, about interactions between people that developed in a manner similar to Signs before tearing that all away, and they failed at it because this slow pace both series have do different things with them. In Roots, that slow pace prevented us from seeing the events and the interactions we should have, and were promised to have been part of things to justify why the story was to exist in the first place, which were alluded to later down the line and said should have been part of what we were supposed to be given, but weren't. And thus it fails to tell a cohesive, complete story. But from the expectations of a prequel relies on the story following it, which was written first, to then go back to fill in what it didn't. With Sign, though, the story is fully there. The pacing allowed them to spend time with each character as much as they could, and develop them and their stories without over-convoluting everything with just event after event. It's just something that becomes bad when you draw things out with such empty, meaningless scenes as an excuse for why you don't have things happen. Now, I'll admit straight out, the first time I went through Sign, I didn't have the appreciation for it I do now. I first watched it when it aired on Toonami in 2003, and didn't keep the best track of it as, well, I was used to more action-oriented series that were running at the time, like Dragon Ball, the Gundam entry of the year, Outlaw Star, Rurouni Kenshin, and the like. They had slow scenes for character moments or discussions of events, but were also punctuated with things happening at a quicker pace that balanced the two types of moments. But, as I said, this is not an action-oriented series, and I think that's the mistake a lot of people make when writing it off or trying to distinguish it from Roots. I had a friend that kept watching and encouraged me to give it another chance as a few more episodes in, things did start to happen. And it's actually because of this series that I first more started to pay attention to the importance of how character is treated in regards to how a story is effectively told, how it can be undermined by focusing on the wrong ones to the detriment of others, how a balance of characters and how they are placed in the foreground and background can influence the appreciation of the cast on a greater scale. And also how easy it is to notice that one fuckwit that steals a stage for themselves and can screw over all of their potential of what a story could be by them taking all those opportunities away. And as a result, Sign is certainly one of those microcosm shows, even without regard to the greater franchise, on how you address character stories, character developments, and lore expansions dealt with through dialogue, even if its big failing is it does not do show, don't tell well at all, because of its pace. But as I said, that's more B-Train instead of their slow series making them dull, and less of it being the fault of the writing or the characters involved. Even though Ito does have a problem when you see enough of his work that he struggles to develop nuanced characters. But before we dive fully into Sign, there's some setting stuff elaborated on later that will help set the universe for those not familiar with it, that'll help you all out in bridging the universe we're walking into in the first era of the Didact franchise, and how it diverged from our own despite them originally setting this in the future when it began back in 2002.
The magnificent far-off year of 2002.
Really?
In the beginning of the 21st century, cybercrimes were at an extreme high. Viruses throughout the network made by humans damaging the infrastructure of the planet. And malevolent hackers produced programs that proved deadly to those suffering epilepsy. To combat this, the United Nations formed the World Network Commission to combat cyber terrorism and viral breakouts. This plan utterly failed, as a 10-year-old released the virus Pluto's Kiss, which shut down every system connected to the internet for over an hour. The fallout from this ultimately comes to be undeniably catastrophic. This event later becomes known as the First Network Crisis, and following it, access to the internet was restricted to government and business sectors. However, the operating system Ultimate, then under development, managed to survive the virus intact, and its creator CyberConnect Corporation improved the OS, releasing it to the public once it met the standards of the WNC. Yeah, CyberConnect are a prominent company inside their own franchise, though as there are many differences between the in-universe one and the real one, collectively their fandom refers to the fictional one as CC Corp. Soon after, a man named Harold Hurwicz approached CC Corp with a prototype of a game called Fragment. Fragment was based upon the epic poem The Epitaph of Twilight, written by a woman named Emma Wyland, who died the year before Pluto's Kiss hit the net. At least until that was unnecessarily retconned in the later end of the franchise. And thanks to the internet crash, her work had been lost to time, save for the most obsessed of fans after Pluto's Kiss, which Harold was, to the point of convincing himself he was in love with her, a woman he had never really met, nor realistically gotten to know. And Fragment, in truth, was actually an AI development system, meant to create a child of the two using Emma's lost work of the Epitaph and Harold's programming genius as the means by which to give birth to them, a monument symbolizing the love he would never obtain. The project was presented to CC Corp as an MMO. Also, the AI creation program at the center of it, and its controller, Morgana Mode Gone, could use data on true human interaction to give real sentience to their offspring, make them look and feel as a real person, on top of making it so they would never be alone in their network prison, as they would always have the players to interact with. Fragment was released from beta by CC Corp in late 2007, the first MMO in years as the WNC released sanctions after Pluto's Kiss's virus's eradication. Renamed The World, the game received over 100,000 downloads on the first day, and soon after became a worldwide hit. With the overloaded popularity, the game was rampant with thieves, acts of vandalism, and general lawlessness and abuse of software can receive, overworking the CC Corp staff, to the point of deputizing a group of users to settle disputes for them, this group known as the Crimson Knights. The Knights sending more serious crimes such as damaging the game's servers up to the company. This staggered the chaos, but left the world in a state where law was upheld solely by the players. This all while some more radical users, hired by CC Corp, sought to purge the game of what they perceived as junk data, damaging the world's core as vagrant AI serving an unknown purpose were detected, cornered, and deleted, with none of them having an inkling to the real purpose and role in making sure the system at the core of the world's programming, its black box files, were working as they should. You learn very quickly that, in the .hack franchise, CC Corp are their own worst enemy, and before the retcons in Link Quantum and the Thanatos Report, did serve as the true big bad villains of the franchise with the actions they set in motion, as opposed to the more focused on central antagonists of each story. Amidst this, the world's first big event, the One Sin, was also defeated by a pair of users who became infamous to the planet. Said players going by the names Balmung and Orca, and having the title Descendants of Fianna bestowed upon them, and later deputized to seek out possible problems in the world by CC Corp due to their prowess in the game that outstripped even the admins. However, a mysterious hacked character with the appearance of a cat appears in 2009, prompting the hunting of it by these radical parties. As the first player to encounter it, a CC Corp debug team member named Alberio, whose own story is told in the prequel novel AI Buster, fell into a coma soon after meeting them, which first put in motion the events that began the direct course of events that come to be focused on as Sign begins. This is all, of course, a very summarized version of .hack's original backstory, most of these details being given or unraveling naturally over time through lore primers, conversations between characters, and the novels which depict some of these events. As within the first era of the series itself, it treats everything and everyone as if they should already know the more public details of this, like the player or viewpoint character is a natural figure who lived all of it or encounters someone who did, and some others are aspects of the greater mystery tied into the mythology arc. I present it all like this as many have accused the series of suffering from continuity lockout, where so many concepts and ideas have been presented over time that it's impossible for a newcomer to do anything but start at the beginning, and that's actually not so. The fact I can simplify it like this and have it all make sense shows that. While the entire franchise does have a successive continuity, each entry is written to be standalone, formatted so you do not have to know anything more than what is presented about it going in, as the relevant details for supporting the story that entry is focused on is all found within the current material you are currently taking in. The problem that can arise, though, is, while all of this material does work in isolation, many additional nuances that broaden appreciation of the story, or at times ruin it, thanks Roots, can only be found by ingesting these other media forms or information primers. And the problem that comes from that is, this is a Japanese property, meaning Western fans do not have access to everything originally made for the Japanese audience, to appreciate all of that content and context, because it was never imported. On more than one occasion, Band of America or its collaborators have not provided content related to an entry which broadened its scope. Seen most recently, relatively since this is the remastered version of this review, with the release of GU Last Recode, where the Japanese Premium Edition made available an audio drama that helped fill in some of the gap to GU Volume 4. Admittedly, Dot Hack has been far luckier than many other franchises in this regard, where they have unimported side story material that is treated as canon, and especially helped by those who managed the Dot Hack Wiki, consolidating much of what may have been lost. But side stories and primer material for this franchise still exist only in Japanese form, that beyond the diligence of fan translators, will never see the light of day for us in the West. We open the series with the spellcasting Wavemaster Tsukasa, real player named An Shoji, waking up in one of the many dungeons of the MMO video game The World, having been attacked, and now finding herself experiencing this game on a far more personal level inside of it. Yes, her body. While Tsukasa is a male player character, his player is a girl. Tsukasa's memory was messed with, making him believe he was a boy from what pieces of his memory carried over to being trapped in his PC. While this is not immediately known, I spoil it early as pronouns can always be tricky when concerning gender dysphoric characters, which An is treated as being at points in time due to her state of existing simultaneously in the game as a boy and in real life as a girl, even though she ultimately does identify female when she regains her full memory. Thus, I will refer to Tsukasa, the player character, as a guy, while they still suffer from the mind screw, as that is what they are identified and referred to as, and An's real-life self as a girl. Ironically, this has led to the series getting some kickback as views on gender identity have shifted over the years, but I'll keep this simple and just say that I'm not qualified to talk on those issues, and the history of LGBTQ rights and representation in Japan is really complicated, as they both are more and less progressive on the whole matter due to a whole host of reasons, and a lack of legal protection has less to do with discrimination and more with there being obliviousness to the need for there to be explicit legal definitions for them to be included. The reason why Tsukasa has become trapped in the game is a mystery that lasts through much of Sign, though the Crimson Knights, the Peacekeeper Force after the Cat PC, identify him as having interacted with said PC in a few incidents. The Cat PC is named Maha, and we never hear her talk. I call it a her, as it's something I will get into in the games. As I said, pronouns can be weird when talking about series where the characters depicted may not be the same gender as they actually or normally are, as you're primarily seeing a representation and not the physical self. Tsukasa first wakes up not long before another player, the heavy-plated sword specialist Mimiru, comes into the same dungeon, before he runs off, going someplace else with his senses out of whack, as he's feeling the game world stronger than the real world, and likewise can't remember where he was before all of this went down. And as real as the game's headset interface makes everything seem, CyberConnect 2 Corporation, inventing the PlayStation VR literally 15 years before the peripheral actually hit stores. Well, no matter how good it is not this good. They really are stuck in here and interacting as if their player character body is their real one, and not a facsimile made up of graphic texture files interpreted by a desktop window. As the mythos of the series explains, eventually, which was then copied into most series that then tried to do the trapped in a game scenario, his nervous system was copied into the PC body, so his normal senses are reacting to the digital body's actions in the same way a real body would, as it's the only way the structure of his consciousness knows how to move the body, and that all made possible by the understanding shortcuts the programs in the system intend to take in data about humans are made to work. While in universe it works, well, since the designer of the system is dead, no one has a good grasp or explanation of the science behind how it works. Just that our own electrochemical makeup of our brain in tandem with how the system runs, once that electrical side is copied into it, creating enough stopgaps to psychologically bridge the two means without need of an external interface to see a rendered version of the game. They embody their player character themselves as a ghost in the machine possessing the form of those they played as. Mimiru finds Tsukasa in the root town of Dunloriag, the two having an argument over how obstinately he acts. This is something that happens a lot with Tsukasa early on, as in their own melancholy, Tsukasa really doesn't feel as if anything matters. So why care if he's just going to be burned again by authority figures anyways?
You know, I just don't like you.
What did you say?
Give it time, she grows on you. It's notable as this is the first time Tsukasa tries to log out and run away from his problems as he usually does, and finds he can't. Though Tsukasa takes it in stride, going out to ride a grunty. I gotta say, grunties are just endearing creatures in every appearance, though as Gyu expands on, the hulking pseudo-cow forms they have here, yeah, a cursed form. They get more adorable later. Later, after attacking a maestro at a misspring as it wouldn't give up a gold and silver axe, Tsukasa encounters Bear, real name Ryo Sakuma, who's amused at how Tsukasa's taking out his frustrations the same way he does and offers to be a friend, though Tsukasa geeks out at the introduction, letting another character, the rare item hunter BT, real name Machiko, be introduced. Bear and BT are old friends, and if you pay attention, they flirt regularly. We cut over to Makinu with two new characters, Subaru, leader of the Crimson Knights, played by Mariko Misono, and her lieutenant Silver Knight. As I gave before, they're the inscripted peacekeepers in the world, keeping things calm amongst the users and investigating issues in the world which are then reported to CC Corp. A recurring issue with the Knights is they really have no official power outside of being common players that CC Corp is asked to keep them appraised of problems that threaten the stability of the system, and their only standing point is their united numbers which can be brought down upon a group of troublemakers. But Silver Knight is too zealous over going after any offense, even if it's benign. Their first interactions with Tsukasa, after all, is all about a character who they believe did mods to their own character. Or in short, they're acting like Bethesda against the people who mod games like Skyrim to, you know, actually make their game work. To be fair though, even Blizzard cracks down on players who attempt to hack World of Warcraft's game data, because that can spitball into people trying to make their character invincible or get immense supplies of game money, when all most game modders want is to put a better gaming interface display, custom skin, new hairstyles, or big boobs on the tune they're playing as. But for the Crimson Knights, they're essentially one step away from becoming a gang acknowledged by the company, only Subaru's commands keeping them in line from stepping over into being lawful evil. Remember that. It will become relevant later. Regardless, Subaru tells him in no way are they to continue harassing Tsukasa. She's already forwarded the matter of finding the Cat PC to Orca and Balmug, who have at this point, as I've said, been deputized to deal with stuff like that as specialists over the masses of the Knights.
It is not easy to act in the name of justice.
Personal, moral, absolute, or as an excuse to act how you please. And thus amidst trying to log out once more, does Tsukasa again cross paths with Mimiru. It's where we see Tsukasa's memory is fragmented, as he is having trouble differentiating this world from the real world, as there now seems as if there's no difference. Though it's always around this point in my watch of the series where I start to get irritated at a major issue with the art. Why, oh why, are their eyes so far apart? Can you imagine if people's eyes were really like that? We'd have a blind spot in front of us like this big. Did no one think of fixing this issue with the character models?
Hang on! Okay.
This is one of many problems I end up having with B-Train's animation. While the art assets look fantastic in the given art style, people's faces are a constant problem for them. And the central issue a lot of their series had was they were animated off model from the original character template, most commonly with this eye issue. And it's very inconsistent whether it actually looked good as, well, the eyes of what they animated were far too far apart from where the center of the face should be, even for what's depicted and expected of anime. I don't know, with people appearing in rather realistic proportions for once in an anime series, it's something that rather bugs me. And what's worse, it's not apparent later in the games. Tsukasa ends up spilling to Mimiru about how he can't log out and is stuck here, though her flippant replies just dig in the reality that her body's gone. All there is the him that is here. And in his panic, he insults her again.
Can't you just leave me alone?
Leave you alone? Who do you think you are? You are unbelievably selfish! I don't want to be the one to say this, but the net is the same as the real world.
Really? Because I have a series where a rom-com protagonist keeps insisting the opposite to his delusional net wife. Yeah, that was undeserved. He was trying to de-escalate and try to avoid you, Miru. But more surprising to Tsukasa is... that actually hurt. Returning to where he woke up, Tsukasa's a flashback to events I already explained. Obtaining a stone tablet from the item chest after the cat PC, Maha appears over it, which speaks to him. As he's leaving, however, he's ambushed by a Silver Knight, who attacks him and blocks him from leaving, showing off just how hypocritical his sense of justice is.
Why do you run?
Because I think it's fun.
As he is about to be killed by the Blademaster, a monster appears and saves him. This monster is known as a Guardian, a creature down the specifications of the world's operating data. The assumption is it was created by Morgana Mode Gone, for reasons we will get into later. Short version, it's protecting him. Silver Knight is killed by the Guardian, his player receiving feedback in the real world, with us later learning he suffered a blackout and short-term amnesia as a consequence of Tsukasa's counterattack. With this all making Tsukasa muse that maybe it isn't that he can't log out, maybe it's just he doesn't want to, and this place has made that wish a possibility.
I've been waiting for you for such a long time. I need you, just as you need me.
I think I like it this way. It's not so bad.
The first episode ends in the real world. An's body on the floor as an ambulance is brought in, comatose to everything. Her headset left crashed down next to her body. As Tsukasa settles into life in, well, the world, we are introduced to another character who is a fan favorite. Sora the Twin Blade, real name, Ryo Misaki.
You're a fool.
Boring and smart, or interesting and foolish? What's your preference?
Oh, Ryo Misaki. The character journey you begin on here, going through 4 games in the background, an OVA, a case of amnesia, a really bad anime that assassinates your character when you're an older teenager, and then a trilogy, now quadrilogy of the second series games, make you be the single most developed character in the franchise. Most popular character in the franchise as well by a significantly wide margin.
When I was little, I joined online games because I was lonely. I ended all my sentences with boing. I attacked people from behind and begged for their member addresses.
Sora in the beginning was something of a quirky individual, an infamous player killer, one of a faction of players who thrive on hunting down other players and assassinating them for various reasons. The strongest player killers in the .hack franchise are known as chaotic PKs, and Sora was one of the few that could be considered such in the original The World R1. He generally wants member addresses for people he finds strong or useful, but his attitude annoys and aggravates the hell out of other players. Ironic, considering what he is actually after. And Ryo and Sign? Approximately 10. Appropriate as outside of gaming trolls, FPS shit-talkers, and griefers, this does fit the anarchist attitudes of a 10-year-old. Hell, the oddities of Sora's actions as a PK aren't that odd. You should look up some of the incidents that happened on PvP servers of World of Warcraft. There's some pretty strange things that go down there. It really showcased how well CyberConnect 2's franchise about MMOs perfectly encapsulated the human experience of playing MMOs years before multiplayer online video games were even feasibly reliable due to the archaic quality the internet was back in 2002, versus what it would be like even 5 years later, that they still got completely right the more you muse on and look on the deeper lore material of this franchise. Certainly got it more right than Sword Art Online did. Anyways, after killing Silver Knight, the Crimson Knights have deployed to every Chaos Gate, the hub between which players traverse between areas and root towns. Hunting for Tsukasa, who tends to frequent the first 2 of such towns, Makanu and Dunloriag. They try to limit his movements between the towns so they can apprehend him, as Silver Knight's real-life damage has made them see him as a threat to the players. Being scapegoated like that seems to be a recurring thing for those named Tsukasa in Japanese media.
That's him! Don't let him get away!
And suffice it to say, they stuck at their job.
But even in here, I'm still running. It's terrible. This place used to be my refuge when I needed to escape from everything. Well, because all I really want is to be alone.
Hearing this, he is led to a specific area by Maha as she offers Tsukasa just that. Though by chance he's seen by Sora as he's on another PKing spree, entering Maha's locked area, which draws his interest into the depressed Wavemaster, and thus his involvement in the series' long game.
The Wavemaster you're still looking to find? Did he seem to be really depressed to you? I love it! He'd be quite an ally.
All while Tsukasa is led into what's known as a creator's room, regions not part of the main game, but are a result of the bridged connections between the black box files and the greater world. And in here, Tsukasa finds a comatose young girl, and a voice that speaks to him. The voice granting Tsukasa his gift? It is of course Morgana. More on that later.
I am on your side. As long as you walk with me, I shall protect you.
This voice grants him the ability to travel between the areas without the use of a Chaos Gate, thus avoiding the Crimson Knight's forces that are always staked around the towns. And the girl? Her name is Aura, the culmination of the AI development program. At Morgana's prompting, he meets with Mimiru and Bear, with sole intent to get them off their backs, while they're concerned with how the Crimson Knights are trying to come down on him, only to shock them once more with the truth that all he is standing right before them. He shows off his guardian, though upon learning about how he's just going to keep being hounded because of the prior altercation, he loses control of it. The guardian attacking the pair... Exactly as Morgana planned.